Her body left behind a church. And now, a decade later, that church still honors that little girl by...
Such a tragic to Carlie, but it's helped a lot of young other kids now.
Stephen Kanzler, Carlie Brucia's stepfather, addressing the large crowd gathered at the Central Church of Christ. Her mother, Susan Shorpen, too emotional to speak, at the place her daughter's body was found 4 days after her abduction.
Hopefully it made kids aware and adults aware. It can happen to you. When you hear about it being somewhere else, you never think it'll happen here in your backyard.
The massive search and the tragic discovery, hard to forget, even for seasoned officers who attended the memorial.
For something like this to happen to her, I think it is probably our worst nightmare.
There is a particular cruelty in ordinariness, in the way a Sunday can feel completely unremarkable. Families gathered around televisions, the smell of something cooking, the sounds of celebration spilling through screen doors, while somewhere just off the main road, in the fading light of a Florida winter evening, something irreversible is already happening. February 1st, 2004. The United States was riding a wave of shared excitement. Nearly 90 million people had tuned in to watch one of the most dramatic Super Bowl finishes in the game's history. The New England Patriots had edged out the Carolina Panthers in a contest that went down to the final seconds. The halftime show had ignited its own cultural firestorm. People were still talking, still celebrating, still replaying the moments that made them cheer. In Sarasota, Florida, an 11-year-old girl was walking home. 1 mile. One familiar road. A journey she had every reason to believe would take only minutes. She never arrived. And what would be revealed in the days that followed, caught on a grainy security camera, pieced together through a brother's breaking conscience and etched permanently into the national memory, would force an entire country to reckon with the gaps in its own systems of protection. This is not simply a story about what happened to Carlie Brucia on that Sunday evening. It is a story about what allowed it to happen. About the machinery of failure. About the choices made long before that walk began. Choices by institutions, by courts, by people who believed someone else would intervene. And it is a story about a little girl who deserved better from every single one of them. And before we go any further, drop your city in the comments right now and tell me what time it is where you are. I love seeing where you all are watching from. And if you're into true crime documentaries like this, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss one. Now, let's get into it. To understand what the world lost on February 1st, 2004, you have to understand who Carlie Brucia was. Born March 16, 1992 in Long Island, New York, Carlie came into the world to parents Joe Brucia and Susan Shorpen. Her early years were shaped by the kind of quiet disruption many children navigate: a family separation, a cross-state move, the ritual of winters and summers spent between two homes, two worlds. Susan relocated to Sarasota with Carlie while she was still very young. Joe remained in New York. The arrangement meant Carlie grew up understanding distance, understanding that love could survive geography. She would spend holidays up north, particularly Christmas, with her father's family, and she would return south to the warmth and bustle of Sarasota, where she had built a life entirely her own. By the time she was in 6th grade at McIntosh Middle School, Carlie Brucia was the kind of presence people noticed. Not for anything dramatic, but for the quality of her attention. She hugged people, not as a reflex, but as a declaration. Teachers described her with words like radiant and alive. Her principal did not reach for platitudes when asked to describe her. He simply said she was a shining light. She sang in the school chorus. She threw herself into sports. She adored her cat Charlie. She was devoted to Jennifer Lopez in the particular way preteen girls commit themselves to admiration, completely and without apology. She loved them all, her friends, the ordinary architecture of adolescent life. Her stepfather, Stephen Shorpen, who had married Susan several years after her move to Sarasota, described Carlie as someone who was always transparent about her whereabouts. If she was going somewhere, she called. If plans changed, she checked in. She was, in that regard, a child who made trust easy. That quality, that reliability, would become one of the first signals that something was deeply wrong. If you value history that refuses to look away from the truth, subscribe to Detective Shelb, because what unfolds next is rarely told the way it actually happened. The 1st of February had begun as a normal day by every measure. Carlie had spent the previous night at a friend's house, a sleepover, the kind of uncomplicated social ritual that defines childhood. As the afternoon moved toward evening and the Super Bowl preparations gathered momentum, she decided to head home. Her house was approximately 1 mile away. The streets were quieter than usual. Most families were settled inside, absorbed in the game. At around 6:15 in the evening, Carlie set off on foot. Her friend's mother, alert to the growing darkness and the uncommon quiet of the neighborhood, placed a call to Susan. Was it all right for Carlie to be walking home alone? The question was reasonable. Susan's answer was direct. She hadn't given Carlie permission to walk, and she was uncomfortable with her daughter being near the Bridge Road, which could carry unpredictable traffic. Susan spoke to Stephen. He got in the car immediately. For several minutes, he drove through streets that were strange in their emptiness, ghost town quiet, while the rest of the country erupted over touchdowns and halftime shows. He drove the route Carlie would most likely have taken. He checked corners. He slowed at intersections. She was not there. Within an hour, 911 received a call from the family. Carlie Brucia, 11 years old, had been reported missing. The response was swift. Officers arrived, began canvassing neighbors, reached out to every friend whose name the family could provide. They spoke to the friend whose house Carlie had left from, and they learned something that would later carry weight. Carlie had been slightly unsettled that afternoon. There had been tension between her mother and stepfather. She had wanted to go home early, not out of distress, but out of a desire to be with her mother. She had walked toward home, toward Susan. The police searched through the night. By 3 a.m., the streets had yielded nothing. By morning, 12 hours had passed. Her classmates arrived at Mackintosh Middle School and looked toward the door for a face that did not appear. When the bloodhound was brought in, it changed everything. Using one of Carlie's pillowcases as a scent anchor, a dog named Ruby traced a trail from the area near her friend's house toward the main road. The scent led to a car wash on Bridge Road, a location called Evie's, and then, as if the trail had been deliberately cut, it simply stopped. The police sealed the property and contacted the owner, Mike Evanoff. He confirmed what investigators were hoping to hear. There were surveillance cameras on the premises, triggered by motion sensors. They began reviewing the footage. 2 cameras showed what any car wash security system would typically capture: empty parking lots, passing traffic, unremarkable intervals of stillness. The 3rd camera, positioned at the rear of the property, had caught something else entirely. At 6:21 p.m. on the evening of February 1st, the motion sensor engaged. A young girl appeared in the frame. Red shirt, blue jeans, pink backpack. This was exactly what Carlie had been wearing when she left her friend's house. She walked into the frame with the posture of someone who had no idea she was being watched. Someone simply passing through, thinking about home. Then another figure entered the frame. A man. He was approximately 5 feet 8 inches tall, dark hair, tattoos visible on one arm. He was wearing what appeared to be a mechanic's uniform, the kind with a name tag on the front, though the resolution made the lettering illegible. He stopped in front of the girl. They exchanged words. A few seconds passed. Then he took her by the arm and led her away. The footage was brief, terrifyingly brief, but it was enough to confirm what investigators had feared from the moment the bloodhound stopped cold. Carlie had not wandered off, had not gotten lost, had not sought shelter somewhere without telling anyone. She had been taken. The footage, once processed, was released to the public, and almost immediately it began to generate leads. But before those calls came in, investigators turned to the people closest to Carlie. Stephen, her stepfather, was brought to the station for a conversation that was standard procedure, but no less difficult for it. He described driving Bridge Road, searching, and then he offered something investigators hadn't expected. He had noticed a red truck circling the same area. It had been parked outside the house where Carlie's sleepover had taken place. He had seen it at the car wash. The man who owned that truck, a man named Ron, was identified through his association with the property where the sleepover had been held. He was brought in for questioning. He maintained he had been working. His time cards confirmed it. A search of his vehicle found nothing. Ron was eliminated. But as that thread was being cut, another began to unspool. When the investigators rewound the car wash footage further, they saw something that had initially gone unnoticed. A pale yellow station wagon, a 1992 Buick Century, pulling into the parking lot approximately 3 minutes before Carlie appeared on camera. The vehicle had approached from Bridge Road, slowing at an unusual point before turning in. This was not random. This was deliberate positioning. The Buick became the new focal point of the investigation, and as hundreds of tips began flooding in from people who had seen the footage of the man in the mechanic's uniform, a pattern emerged. Multiple callers independently were offering the same name: Joseph Peter Smith. A woman who had once worked in the same professional space as Smith watched the car wash footage with her husband. She described what she saw not with uncertainty, but with the particular confidence of someone who has spent months observing another person's habits and movements. She recognized the shoes, the haircut, the specific way he moved his arm when he reached out. She had watched him pick up tools the same way. She called the police and gave them a name and an address. Detectives drove out in an unmarked car. A neighbor confirmed someone was home. Officers knocked. No answer. It emerged during the wait that the man they were looking for was not simply a person of interest. He was a person already known to the system. He was on probation. He had not one but 2 previous probation violations on his record, yet had avoided remand both times. His criminal history stretched back more than a decade, touching on drug possession, fraud, and, crucially, a prior arrest for kidnapping and false imprisonment, charges from which he had eventually been acquitted. He was currently unemployed. His probation officer was summoned to the property. Before she arrived, a woman emerged from inside the house. It was Smith's sister. She agreed to go in and bring him out. And there he stood. Joseph Peter Smith, 37 years old, father of 3, originally from Brooklyn. A man whose life had become a series of second chances that the system had continued, inexplicably, to extend. During questioning, Smith was cooperative on the surface. He denied being at the car wash. He expressed confusion at why investigators were even at his door. When shown a still from the surveillance footage, he said the man in the image looked like him, but wasn't. He consented to a search of his room and his vehicle. In the room, they found a mechanic's uniform with a name tag on the front. In the car, a brown Lincoln, they found drug paraphernalia. Smith was placed under arrest for violating his parole terms and for possession of drug-related items. But the investigation had not closed. It had simply changed shape. Because, as Smith's car was being processed, a woman named Naomi arrived at the property. She owned the home where Smith rented a room, and she was driving a pale yellow Buick station wagon. Naomi told officers that Smith had an alibi for the evening in question. She said she could account for his whereabouts. That around 6:30 he had been on a phone call with his estranged wife. For a few hours, the investigation stalled. Smith appeared to have an alibi. The Buick had an innocent owner. The thread seemed to go cold. Then, Naomi's husband Jeff arrived at the station. Jeff drove the same Buick station wagon, and Jeff had a different memory of that evening. He described a conversation with Smith earlier that Sunday. Smith had asked to borrow the car, said he'd be gone 15 minutes. Jeff had agreed. Smith had left. When Jeff woke the next morning, the car was back. But so was Smith, showing up at the door at 7:30 a.m. in a state Jeff struggled to describe. Not disheveled, not guilty. Something stranger than that. He looked serene, clean, composed, rested, as though whatever had happened had resolved something for him rather than unsettled it. Jeff also noticed that things inside the vehicle had shifted. The back seat had been moved. Items had been rearranged. He handed the Buick over to law enforcement for processing. With Jeff's account, the alibi collapsed. Joseph Smith had borrowed the car on the evening Carlie vanished. His whereabouts from approximately 6:15 to 7:30 were, by his own account and everyone else's, unaccounted for. He was read his Miranda rights. He asked for a lawyer. The interrogation room fell silent. On the evening of February 4th, John Smith, Joseph's brother, arrived at the police department voluntarily and agreed to speak with...
I woke up. I don't know. Nothing happened since that. They were giddy and all night long when I was sleeping. In other words, so I woke up Sunday morning, like I normally do, get up, get ready for work.
So if you didn't see her at any point after...
During the day?
During the day, or if you went to work?
Absolutely not.
Is that what you wore to work Sunday? Or
No, actually I had a Super Bowl shirt on yesterday. A great shirt.
They showed him a photograph of Carlie with the man in the car wash.
is that...
Thanks. False idea. So definitely not me. It does look like me, though. So,
It kind of looks like it. That's why we're talking to you.
yeah, definitely would not be me there. Honest.
The deputies that you spoke to that night think that that's you.
It's not me. Blow it up. Do what you got to do. We verify my time, where I was. I'm more than glad to work for you guys, and I believe me, there is no way. I mean, that was me. Honest God. No way at all. I would never put anybody through that. No way.
How do we get past that, though?
That's verifying where I was at 6:21.
The next day at work, Joseph reportedly washed his hands repeatedly, long past the point of any visible dirt. He told his employer he might need to leave the state at any moment without notice. When John went to the station to speak with investigators, he sat with Joseph and their mother. After over an hour, John emerged and told the officers that Joseph had come close, but hadn't confessed. He was lying. Joseph had spoken. He had said, "I'm sorry I did this to you." Their mother left the room, and Joseph continued. He told his brother he had taken what he believed was cocaine that afternoon, that everything afterward had become fragmented, blurred. He described it not as a confession, but as an apology to his brother for putting them all in this position. John had left the station without telling the FBI what he now knew. He believed his phone was tapped. He called the FBI afterward, assuming they had already heard everything. They hadn't. 3 agents drove immediately to John's home, and there, in the quiet of that night, John gave them directions. 6221 Proctor Road, near I-75, behind the Central Church of Christ, at 1 a.m. On February 5th, investigators moved through thick underbrush in the darkness until the beam of a flashlight found what they had both dreaded and needed to find. Carlie Brucia had been found. A storm was rolling in. The decision was made to leave her in place until morning, both to preserve the integrity of the scene and to prevent aerial photography. The police department contacted the White House. A no-fly zone was established over the area. When daylight came and the medical examiner was able to work, the findings told a story no one wanted to hear. Ligature marks, evidence of a struggle, forensic material that would later be matched, with a statistical certainty that borders on the absolute, to Joseph Peter Smith. 2 of Carlie's hairs were recovered from the Buick, 7 fibers from her red shirt. Her clothing and pink backpack had been distributed across multiple dumpsters in a deliberate attempt to obscure the trail. Sheriff Bill Borwell drove to Susan's house. He knocked on the door. He delivered the news that every officer dreads delivering, and that every parent lives in terror of receiving. Susan's scream, by all accounts of those who heard it, was not something that faded easily from memory. The community that had searched for Carlie now gathered to mourn her. Flowers were placed at the church. Banners that read, "We love you, Carlie," appeared outside her home. McIntosh Middle School opened its doors for grief counseling. Parents who had watched the search unfold with mounting dread now clutched their own children a little closer, and in many cases would not let them walk alone for months. On February 20th, 2004, Joseph Smith was formally charged with kidnapping, sexual battery, and first-degree murder. The trial that followed was, by any measure, harrowing. The evidence was overwhelming. The footage, the fibers, the DNA, the car, the boots, the disappearing alibi, and the confession, relayed through a brother who had spent one night wrestling with what it meant to know something that monstrous about someone you share blood with. John's testimony was complicated by his own legal troubles at the time, but the jury heard what it needed to hear. In December 2004, the jury voted to recommend execution. The following March, the judge made it official. The legal road after sentencing was long and turbulent. Smith filed appeal after appeal. A 2016 Supreme Court ruling complicated Florida's death penalty statutes. His sentence was temporarily lifted, then reinstated, then referred back to a lower court for a new sentencing hearing. Carlie's father, Joe Brucia, watched each development with a grief that had long since calcified into something harder and colder. Not rage exactly, but a clarity about how thoroughly the system had failed his daughter at every stage. Smith had violated his probation. The terms were explicit. Further violations would mean 5 years of incarceration. Instead, he had been placed on drug offender probation. He had been returned to the streets, and 4 days later, he encountered an 11-year-old girl on a quiet road. Joe Brucia did not accept this without response. He contacted his congressional representative, Katherine Harris, and asked her to do something. She introduced legislation under Carlie's name, Carlie's Law, which sought to return federal felons to custody upon committing certain offenses, particularly those involving children. A companion bill was introduced in Texas. The advocacy was genuine, the legislative push real. The bill did not pass. Harris pledged to reintroduce and expand it. That, too, did not materialize in the form intended. The gap in the system that Joseph Smith had walked through remained, in many essential ways, open. Joseph Smith died on July 26, 2021, at the Union Correctional Institution. He was 55 years old. The cause was reported as liver cancer, though some sources attributed his decline to hepatitis C. He had never been formally charged in connection with the unsolved 2000 murder of 25-year-old Tara Riley, whose body had been found behind a Walmart in Bradenton, Florida. His brother John believed Joseph was responsible. In a recorded prison phone call, Joseph's response to a question about Riley was noted. Not a denial, not exactly a confirmation, but the particular evasiveness of someone who knew what the silence meant. Carlie's mother, Susan, struggled for years after her daughter's death. She turned to substances to manage a grief that conventional language seemed unable to contain. She was held in prison on related charges at the time of Smith's sentencing. She died at the age of 47. The memorial garden at the Central Church of Christ, the place where Carlie's body was found, and which the community had transformed into a site of remembrance, fell into disrepair over the years. Volunteers came forward periodically to restore it. Family friends organized cleanup efforts. The garden persisted, imperfectly, because the people who loved Carlie refused to let it disappear entirely. Her father, Joe, kept her photographs everywhere in his home. He spoke about her consistently and with a specificity that resisted generalization. He spoke about who she actually was, not as a symbol, not as a tragedy, but as a person, his daughter, who loved her cat and Jennifer Lopez, and the feeling of a warm hug returned. There is a particular kind of accountability we resist when tragedy strikes. We speak of monsters. we draw lines between the extraordinary cruelty of one individual and the ordinary functioning of the world around him. We locate evil in a single face captured on a grainy frame of footage, and we find a kind of terrible comfort in the containment that offers. But the story of Carlie Brucia does not permit that comfort, because Joseph Smith was not a shadow who appeared from nowhere. He was a man with a file, a man with a history. A man who had sat before judges and probation officers and parole boards and been returned again and again to the world. Not because the evidence of danger was absent, but because the system chose, for reasons of cost and policy and precedent, to extend chances it did not have to extend. An 11-year-old girl paid the price for that choice. We call the laws we pass in memory of children a form of justice, and perhaps they are, but justice and prevention are not the same thing, and a law named for someone cannot undo what was done to them. What survives, in the end, is not the legislation that failed to pass, not the appeals that dragged through courts for nearly 2 decades, not even the conviction itself. What survives is the memory of a girl who greeted the world with open arms, who sang in the chorus and ran on the field and loved without strategy. What survives is the question we have never fully answered. How many warning signs does a system need before it protects someone? History is not what survives on paper. It's what survives in silence. Subscribe to Detective Shelb if you're ready to confront the stories most people never question.